Hello, all. I have just emailed Clara to reconfirm our meeting again. I'm waiting for her to log in. So just sit tight and we will hopefully start in just a minute. She's confirmed that she's just trying to log in. She's having some technical difficulties, so hang tight.
Okay. Hello, everybody.
Hello, Clara. How are you?
I'm good. Sorry about being late. There was a meeting earlier, and then it just I don't know, it ran late.
No,
Okay. Yes.
totally understand. Looks like we have a pretty good turnout today. I wanted to introduce Clara, and she's going to talk to us today in regards to concept design and some of her background and her experiences and things like that. So, with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah. First of all, hello. I am Clara. So basically, I. This is my first time doing anything of the sort. So I was just wondering what I should talk about. I guess. I don't know.
Really,
Can
we'll
we?
leave it up to you. We'd love to hear kind of your background, talk about some of the companies that you've worked for. I think Universal Creative is in your background. I know the students would love to hear that. And then just really any advice you might have on what they should think about in forms of studies, what they should think about in concentrate in school, things like that.
Okay. I wanted to go around the room and first ask everybody about what they wanted to any questions that they might have before I proceed, just so that I can address them before sounding like a teacher. So yeah, anybody has just can you guys introduce yourself, I guess? Yes. Whoever goes first. Yes.
I'll jump in since I'm here. My name is Josh Polk. We've connected on LinkedIn. I'm actually one of the professors here with themed entertainment. So I just wanted to say hi and thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
Does anybody have any specific things they want to hear from Clara? Any specific advice, anything like that?
No?
Hi,
You'll
Clara.
you'll find our
Yes.
students are very shy sometimes.
Hi, Clara. Hi, nice to meet you. I just want to know, how did you get into this industry, and what would be your advice, maybe in your study, or what's your background, so kind of understand kind of your way to get into Universal, I guess.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. No, I'm not gonna do like a Q&A, but okay. Let me I did prepare just in case that this didn't go the way um go in the way of a Q&A, I did prepare like a little thing. Can I get sharing screen access, please?
You should have access to that.
Huh. Oh, there we go. Let's see. It says it disabled screen sharing.
Oh,
Yes.
multiple. Let's try that. See if that'll
There
let.
we there we go. Okay. Okay, let's do this. Okay, that's gonna do a gigantic view. Okay, so hello everybody. I am going to talk a little bit about how I got to where I am, and then talk about a little bit about how I got into it, what I think is important, and everything of the sort. So I I'm Clara. I'm a concept artist. I sometimes concept design. Depends on what the company asks me. I do freelance now, but I still work pretty regularly with Universal Studios Hollywood. So yeah. So these are some of the companies I worked with. I actually got my start, and don't expect this because I know now that it's pretty abnormal to do this, but I started my career out with Walt Disney Imagineering without having done an internship with them. I actually applied a few times and I failed every single time. They didn't like me enough. So I went from Walt Disney Imagineering, and then I went to Universal Studios, still with them, Studio Archer, which is like a small firm that Walt Disney Imagineering alumni established. And they do mainly interior design and retail design. I did work with National Animation Museum and Museum of Ice Cream. I also worked with Leisure Expert Group in the Netherlands. I also worked with a bunch of other like firms all around the world. So basically, I'm a um, concept designer, and yeah. So this is not my art, but I just wanted to go through what concept artists do. We do not always design concept design. Like we don't always concept design. This is all usually predetermined by people who do the concept design part, and usually that is determined by the creative director and usually sometimes the concept artists themselves, and we play our own roles, but usually it is up to our supervisors or people who do the higher concepts in order to create this, from my experience. And then these are some of the other examples that my previous supervisor, Kim Irvine, worked on. It was actually concurrent when I did the content management queue. They were also working on this, and I think they had just released it as I left. And this is another one. I believe for this Zootopia, they didn't take a lot of liberty, and sometimes it really depends. I was anticipating to be one of the questions, because how much creativity do you have and how much liberty do you have in terms of like IP? Answer is it really depends. If the world building is pretty strict, then you do not get a lot of liberty, but most times you do. Anyway, yeah, anyway. But what I think is fun, and I'll go into this, the reason I got into concept art is that I get immersed into the artwork a lot because I need to produce a lot of details. And I'll go into this a little more later, but like you all know, immersion is pretty important. Even though we call it immersive experiences, there's a reason we call it that, because we get immersed through details, and details I think are not really that details are not really emphasized enough in any concept design part, because we are too focused on high concepts in order to like get the process going. But what we do as concept artists it is to determine that detail. So yeah. Anyway, I actually went to film school. So yeah. I did not study Dean Entertainment. Dean Entertainment wasn't really a degree at the time I became that when I started school, well, it was still a thing. Like Disney has been around for I don't know how long, but it wasn't really like a recognized field of study as much as it was. I don't know the history of the schools. But anyway, my dream was to do production design for film because I didn't want to be a director. I didn't know what artistic statement or artistic philosophy I wanted to communicate. So I decided, oh, I want to do pretty things. And then I decided I wanted to do production design. And I don't know if you may know, it's a pretty competitive school to get into, as you probably do with Purdue. And I was like, yay, dreams. And then a few years later, in junior year, I took a class in themed entertainment because that was around the time when previous Imagineering executive Joe Garlington got involved with the School of Cinematic Arts at USC and started teaching themed entertainment to students in the game department. He's now he's not a chair of the Dean Entertainment Design program, I believe, as far as I am concerned. Anyway, after that, I got really into theme park design because I thought it was an amazing alternative, or like at the time I still saw it as an alternative. I thought it was an amazing secondary path to go down if the film career didn't work out, and it didn't, by the way, spoilers alert. And then I found out about the Disney Imaginations competition hosted by Walt Disney Imagineering. I know it is probably discontinued or not available to as many schools as possible now, but they
I think
stopped.
right now it's an invitation only, if I'm not mistaken. They
Okay.
do have it very, very limited, very limited. So it's kind of, in essence, discontinued unless you're invited.
Okay, so it
Clara,
is no longer a thing anymore. Anyway, that was how I got in
hey Clara.
to Walt Disney Imagineering. Yes?
Oh, never mind. So when you had your screen share up, there was like a window that was blocking part of the screen. I was just going to tell you, ask if you could move it, but you stopped the share,
This
so
one?
never mind.
This
Thanks.
one?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think
Okay.
you're good now.
Okay. So, yeah, Disney Imaginations. The reason I brought this up is this is how I started learning about imaginations. If you don't believe me, here's proof. This is me. I did at the time Disney hosted an like essentially what is popularized now, I believe, like a theme park design competition, and it was like the first of its kind, and it was very competitive because as far as it's known, outside of the internship opportunities, it was the only way into Disney Imagineering because WDI only either converted employees from from internships, and I still think they kind of do. Anyway, my
And
the
Claire, if I
proposed
could inject real quick, just for all of you guys out there, while Imaginations is kind of halted now due to COVID, just be on the lookout. We here
yeah.
at Purdue are looking to start a new competition called Imagination Unleashed, and Clara has so graciously agreed to be a mentor during that. Thank you again for that. And you will see information for the launch of that coming out in January.
Okay, yeah, but yes, some of you will be meeting with me. But it was very similar. It was a competition, and when you advanced into the final six or five or however many like finalists out of like however many hundreds, you get to you get to be mentored by previous Imaginations alumni who are working at Imagineering and are full-time employees, and then you develop like a full-on presentation together to um, present it to WDI, a bunch of people at WDI, and then you get invited to talk, invited to like basically interview for internships. It was a great opportunity. I'm sad it got disconnected, but at the time the form looked like this. We were out of the six finalist groups. My group was the competing group that had two members, including me, who were doing it, and the max number of participants were four. It's a lot of work to do. Um, to design theme parks from scratch or like theme experiences from scratch. So do keep in mind, don't do it with just you and one other person by when you entered Imaginations Unleashed. Anyway, this was actually one of my first concept art. It was actually the first thing I did in digital. Anyway, I learned digital when I was in 2017, no, 2019. Before that, I learned how to do watercolor. I'll show you my few pieces of watercolor later on, but if I do have it in here. But yeah, it's essentially very rudimentary. Maybe you might not think it's rudimentary, but then like certain things are off now that I see it. And I didn't really have that much education in art. I was actually self-taught. So like I was just doing everything from scratch. Another one, I'm not here to critique my own work, but these were some of the things that I presented back then. This was another one. Some photo bashing did not do an exceptionally good job. However, it did get me into digital painting, sort of, and I am grateful for that. And then, well, the happy ending would have been like, oh, I got a job from Imagineering, I got an internship, I did concept design. The end did not happen. Because back then WDI saw through my art and determined that I wasn't good enough for like concept design, and I really wasn't. And B, I thought I was a failure because I was the only person out of the 20 something finalists that didn't get invited back to WDI. So it actually crushed me. But then COVID happened, and I started looking for ways to come back to the United States because they still haven't given up on film. I reverted back to film because I didn't think theme park design was my way. Because if you don't get accepted to WDI at the time, that was my thought. Are you good enough? That sort of thing. Spoiler alert, you are still good enough, but that was what I thought when I was younger. Anyway, I went to grad school at UCLA, both shortly after I graduated. Shortly after I graduated in 2018, I did my work permit here in, sorry? Oh, okay. I shortly did my work permit year in 2019 to 2020, and then I came back to grad school for 2020. It was a miracle that I started grad school. I wasn't allowed to go unless I got a huge scholarship, which I did. Anyway, this was when I started my 3-year journey into doing concept art, not for theme parks and immersive experiences in theater, but mostly for film. Anyway, this was actually my assignment for my first Photoshop class. I got taught by this really famous concept artist who did essentially all of the Disney films and all of the Mandalorian series, Drew Leung, and he taught me a lot of good things. And this was one of the first assignments that I did in Photoshop. He basically taught us a lot of photo batch, so I didn't draw everything from scratch. Anyway, this was one of my first assignments, and when I don't have it in here, but my final assignment got an A, and I was like, oh, okay, maybe I have a future in it. So I started pursuing it during grad school, abandoning production design for film completely, not completely, because I did still have to study it because that was my major, but that was when I started that journey into concept art. And then came year 3 when I had to do my thesis. So yes, you will be able to see my thesis. This is not my thesis, but this is like a paper project for Bottom Think, which is like a Coen Brothers directed film, and this is supposed to be the lobby of the Hotel Earl. That is like the main setting of the film, and I am just going to show you how I go from process to process, and it's actually very similar to how you do concept art/design in real life at themed entertainment. So you would read the script, or for the equivalent of themed entertainment, you would look through the treatment or like the show writing piece of of the uh, the concept that was already discussed and previously done by um, all the creative directors and the writers, everybody else that came before me. And then they usually hand you like a deck, like a mood board deck that has a general idea of what the space or what the place is going to look like. If you get lucky, and this was the case with when I worked with Kim, they give you like a lot more detailed references. Kim is just really detail oriented and she has a different eye. So I think that was my only time when I got a lot of detailed references for like rocks and pavilions and stuff like that. But most of the times that you have to gather your own detailed references, otherwise it's just not going to fly. Because I paint pretty wishy-washy if you do take a look at my portfolio, but you can't do wishy-washy in themed entertainment because details are really what matters, and I will again talk about it later on at the end. But I started looking for more detailed architectural references, and then I go in small, and then I look for detailed props from chests to sconces, and then I started with like a really basic sketch. And then I sometimes plan out a schematic drawing or like the floor plan or like drafting. And then I jumped into modeling at the time, which is basically done in Maya, I think. I don't think I used to do Blender at this time. And then I sketched over the model to see and figure out the detail. And then I did a redo. Well, this was the finished product back then in 2023 when I was still in grad school and did this for a school assignment, but I redid this in 2024. So I think just to show you, it's always like a work in progress, my journey as well. And you will also be when you are in the professional world. But that's basically the process.
Clara, you had mentioned your portfolio. Would you mind to drop a link to your portfolio in the chat so they can take a look at it if they wish?
Right now,
Just before we end, I'd love for them to be able to see it, go back and
yes,
read.
of course. Yes, yes,
Awesome.
of course.
Thank you.
Anyway, this is my thesis, 1001 Nights. Keep in mind all of my work that I am showing you here is film related or like adapted from film work because I did not study themed entertainment. And I might talk about the importance of that later. I would debate it on it, but I do think it's still important. Anyway, these are some of my sketches for my thesis. These are some of the finished renderings. Again, process goes for my self-directed project. I started with a very general reference, like a mood board sort of situation. And then I jumped into detailed architectural research. Then I started sketching. I started sketching again. And then this was one of my finished projects. Yeah. This was not the painting that got me my job at WGI, which was my first job ever. Um, I do actually think the painting that got me was this one, ironically, because Kim really liked the mood. She did single this out when I was talking with her. Anyway, coming back to my thesis, sometimes you do mood paintings and mood, like informing paintings that inform mood. And it's okay to be pushing boundaries a little because for this one, you don't really know what time it is. One of the critiques that I received for this particular project, this particular piece was that, okay, you don't know what time it is. I think it's sunset. I think it's day. I don't know what it is. But sometimes you don't really need to do that. And sometimes, as much as details are important, theme parks are also all about what the first impression is. So, yeah, to anticipate another question, really, it's also about whatever, it's also really about whatever um, whatever mood that you're going for, whatever purpose that the painting serves, and yeah, and then you go into endless feedback loop of like self critique or other critiques, and yeah, um, and then the strike happened. I thought I was done for. Because when the strike happened in Hollywood in 2023, the writer's strike, the SAG strike, the actors strike, I thought it was the end, and then the WDI happened. Um, I worked at WDI Anaheim, which is like right next to Disneyland. 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I did not work at the Glendale campus yet, although I know people and I have connections there. It was weird to be back in with WDI after I got rejected years later. So this is another message. Even if you get rejected now, you never know how you would end up being back. So yeah, this was my first ever concept art for professional work. It was for the Haunted Mansion queue expansion, and now it's built, and they graciously put my painting up in Disneyland for a year. I don't know how that happened, and then they did they did Dilton now, so you can go see it, and it's there. I recently got to see it, and I was overwhelmed anyway. And then after WDI, I worked with Universal on FanFest. I worked on One Piece and Back to the Future, and I also worked on the Museum of Ice Cream for concept design for Las Vegas, especially on the main space, which I cannot tell you. And they are planning a chapel that you can get married in. That I can tell you because it's in the article. Anyway, I can't show you the artworks that I did, but the final artwork that I did are very similar to the pictures that are shown here, like the composition and everything. I was very glad. Anyway, and then this was also another thing. The top left corner is exactly the composition that I suggested, so it was also great. Anyway, this is, you know her, Bryman. This is one of my heroes, and this sort of informed my um, art processes early on when I was starting the entertainment. So it's really also important to have a role model. It doesn't have to be people that are alive, but I do think it has served me a direction in terms of like what kind of art that I want to aim for. And yeah, anyway, another few works, and that's one of my other works for pre-production for film, and that's it, I think. But I did want to talk to you about why I changed my major a little bit. It really was I didn't change my major because I wanted to. And I'm saying this out loud because it's going to throw, life will throw a curveball at you because I wanted to do film and my heart is actually, and this is kind of like, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but my heart is actually still on film. So yeah, but I love being entertainment and I love working with like immersive experiences and different installations and everything in production design. But I love the work that I do. And it is really important to know that sometimes life will throw a curveball at you, but you will find your way back in one way or the other. Because my goal was to still do concept art, and I am doing concept art in a way. So, and the process is really similar to film. So I'm just really grateful for what I do. And what is, I feel like, the most important thing, in my opinion, to do being entertainment successfully is attention to detail. I really wanted to emphasize this, and I can't emphasize this enough because I think one of the reasons why the Harry Potter franchise was so successful and went on to become like attractions in a whole world, whole real physical world in London as like the Harry Potter studios and in Universal was because the world building was so well done. And you would think world building is generally impressions and like a lot of like concept, but it really is all about detail because first impressions are always created through excellent detail. And the more detail you can put in, the better, as long as you have a solid concept. Um, details create like connection between different worlds, and details create a story. So I wanted to tell you that I think you want to study as much ways to create different stories within little things. Why is this there? Like, why is this prop there? Why is the stagecoach? Why is the stagecoach standing there? That sort of thing. And that's my personal thing that I'm working towards because I'm also not very good at detail, but I do think details inform good concept art. And yeah,
Clara, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but when you're talking details, I want to remind the students that you're talking not necessarily details in digital painting and the work, the physical work, but you're talking about details of the subject matter, correct?
yes.
Okay. I want to clarify for that for them because you said that I think you called some of your work wishy-washy. Is that what you called it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it wasn't necessarily highly detailed work physically on the painting, but it did have a lot of detail information in it. So I want to make sure they understood the difference there.
Yeah, definitely. Because I wanted to really emphasize it because I do think it's important to talk about why things were successful in like theme parks or like different places that you go to. And we do determine a lot during the research process. And that's when the importance of content comes in. You don't have to be an excellent artist in order to be a concept designer, in my opinion, or like a creative director because I did like a talk at San Diego Comic Con about concept art, and Sarah Bale, who is a creative director at Tate, used to be a writer. So she talked about her perspective on how writing intersects with concept art and how writing informs concept art. Um, Content is really important. So if you can really imagine beyond the concept statement and go into the details of the story, details of what needs to go in there, etc. I'm sure somebody will notice you. And I think that is it. Yes. I know I did a good job, but yes, that's it.
Can you talk a little bit more about how you said there's a lot that goes into the research stage before, typically, how long would you spend on the research part of it?
Me, I spend, sorry, I don't know how to turn this off. There we go. Um, I spend like at least 50% of the time, for my process in research because I think at the end of the day, even though I spend a lot more time painting, I do need to gather more references. And I think I think including the research that the in people do above me, like above in the process before me, there's probably a lot more research done than there is like actual concepting. So probably in the grand scheme of things, like 80%, and then like
Wow.
concept art is a really small part of it.
Wow. So see, everybody, especially who's taken my classes, I've told you research and reference is very important. And now I have proof. Someone has backed me up on that.
Yeah, so not me. I don't do a lot, but I get a lot of references.
But it's
Kim gave
handed
me,
to you at the beginning from
yeah,
someone else. Awesome.
from the beginning of the team because
Yeah.
what you do in I believe in themed entertainment design, you are your own director, you're your own creative director, starting with the creative director who conceives the idea. So so much research is done, so don't underestimate the importance of it. Anyway, yeah.
It looks like Shelby asks, would love to hear more about how writing connects with concept art.
Can you define a little more about what you want to know.
Hey, sure. So, I have kind of a writing background, like show writing, and so I was interested because you said like that writing informs the concept art, and concept art informs the writing. So, I'd love to hear more about like your like interactions with writers.
Writing sometimes come before, writing sometimes come after. It doesn't necessarily have to deal with the set design, but you need to be able to communicate the essence of the story within the concept art. So, and sometimes in my case, the concept art needs to communicate everything of the story. Kim explained in great detail about all of the story that's behind the expansion, like the Q expansion within within the Q within the concept art. So she talked about how Madam like Leota came out and created a garden, that sort of thing. There's spirits congregating in the trees, stuff like that. So writing is informative to concept art because we need to know the story in order to tell why things are there. Nothing is there by accident. You just don't put sconces in there just because they're decorative. You need to have how much years have it aged, why did somebody put it there, whose like preferences was it, everything of the sort. Writing, on the other hand, informs concept art also informs writing because sometimes we suggest a lot of detail and a lot of research and a lot of different things. So, in rare cases, writing might expand depending on what the suggested visuals are. Um, it goes both ways. Usually, I find writing informing the concept art a lot more because when jobs come to me, it's the idea is usually pretty in flux, but the first idea that needs to be illustrated is pretty finalized. So there's that. Yes.
Does that help, Shelby? Awesome. Let's see. Holden asks, can you talk about when you draw concept art, what is really locked in and what you have freedom to move? For example, the Haunted Mansion queue, did you just draw the layout of the switchbacks and planters, or was it already given to you as a map from the architects?
Actually, the architects get my drawing first.
Oh,
So, sometimes I get it's a little bit of a mixed match. Sometimes the architects give me give me the model, or like the show set designers give me the model. Sometimes the concept architect gives me sketches, but I don't think architects usually give me stuff because mine is usually in the very blue sky in the process. So to segue into the question, you don't necessarily very rigidly determine things because everything's concept design, everything's concept at the end of the day. Concept is supposed to be an idea. It's not necessarily something that you are fixed within. You need to be open to ideas because I am aware that my concept art is going to change down the line. As in, like, somebody will paint over it or like they might discard it entirely. Um, that being said, what is locked in is, like I said, the details of the story. Like, if there is a planter that's going to be there that is important to the story, that needs to stay the way it is, and that needs to stick to the research. But layouts don't really matter. I determined my composition. Actually, I didn't. The concept artist that got sick, um, because she had to step out. I came into the story. I came into the picture, and I started doing concept arts based on her composition. But I determined all of the colors, a lot of the colors, because she trusted me. Kim trusted me to bring myself into the project because I had a lot of color playing in, and color was important to Kim because she used to be a color stylist way before she actually climbed up the ladder to become concept director before she retired. I'm really sad. Anyway, yeah. So I can't really tell you what is already locked in. That it's really not that rigid, especially when it comes to concept art. And I do think it is really important to remember that I lost my train of thought, but really be open to flexibility and don't think your ideas dictate everything because it's going to change. Sometimes it goes all the way back to the beginning if you're lucky. Sometimes somebody else will take over, but yeah, that is
Okay.
that is
Holden, does that answer your question?
Yes, that was perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. How do you feel about AI concept art? Are you using it in any part of your process?
I do not
That's a good question.
personally. I do not personally because I'm not against AI actually. I'm personally not for AI. It's just that I paint and I think I need to do it on my own. And also, first of all, I do think it significantly slows down my process when I do AI because they have research. And I can't like feed everything into AI that creates like a unique story. So, not really. In film, sometimes the director hands you an AI deck and say, "This is what I'm looking for." I haven't seen that yet happening in the entertainment because not yet, but I'm pretty sure some films do use it. But we all agreed during our concept art panel that in Comic Con San Diego that AI is a tool at the end of the day. And landscapes, like the landscape of teen entertainment or any artistic field for that matter, changed so much and is in flux and changes all the time when it comes to when since we entered the 21st century. It's a regression, in my opinion, to be against AI staunchly because you need to be able to learn how to use tools. If you don't use it, you fall back. Or at least if you have the awareness of it, you will go somewhere. But if you do rule it out entirely and go like, okay, AI shouldn't be used because whatever, I think that might inhibit your progress because sometimes things need to change and things are still changing. Like AI is not going to be ever the same in like 10 years. So I think you should remember that it is a tool at the end of the day. It's not a final communicator. But you do need to recognize that it is a tool then that sometimes you need to know how to use. Does that answer your question?
Yep. Thank you.
Yes.
Actually, an awesome observation. I really like the way you put that.
I was curious about your process. I know you like paint, like with actual paint, but do you bring that into digital, turn it into Photoshop, add details? Do you use tablets? Do you use screen to draw on? Like what's all the different pieces?
Everything I showed you is digital. So when I use Cintiq because well it depends. One of my co-freelancers, whatever, um, co-workers um actually use like a tablet. So it really depends on your preference. Sometimes people use Cintiq, sometimes people use like tablets that are like Wacom tablets or bamboo, whatever. Whatever floats your boat. At the end of the day, nobody cares what tool you use as long as it does the job. So yes. But I use Photoshop. I sometimes use Maya, sometimes rarely use Rhino and Unreal. I use Blender. I stopped using Maya actually because it's too expensive after school. So there's that. But Photoshop, Blender, SketchUp, sometimes Rhino, but that's it.
Yeah, I absolutely love your kind of painterly style, but you have these really nice details and patterns and things built into things. It's just beautiful. I also was curious about like it sounds like you've gotten like little contract jobs like for certain things. How do you get on to that list where they call you? Is it all connections? Did you apply? Like how did you start to get into to where you're their best option?
Oh God. It is connections because for WDI, I was a contractor because I never was. I had connections since Imaginations because I just happened to be their finalists and I met a bunch of people. And I still stay in a lot touch with a lot of executives. So there's that. But but a lot of it is networking and a lot of it is keeping in touch with them. You don't just email them once and then like think that they remember you. Spoiler alert, they don't. There's so many of you in this. There's only 10. Ideally, there's just 10 and they remember all of you. They're not going to. There's other schools. There's so many students that want to do theater entertainment. Not to discourage you. It's just that you don't remember people just by seeing them once. So it's really important to be on their radar. So it's networking, but consistent reminders that you exist. Yes. Any questions, comments, concerns?
Anything, guys? We have an expert here that's got a lot of knowledge, so make sure you're asking your questions.
I guess I have a question. Hi, I'm Cassie.
Hello.
Polk put us in contact. Um, I guess how long does not necessarily from start to finish, since you already kind of talked about that, but how long does a piece take for you to like paint? Like, how quick is the turnaround that they typically ask for?
For me, it's 10 hours. The shortest turnaround I ever had was a day and a half. But usually, depending on the creative director, there's a lot of revisions and they are there to give you feedback. So that might just take like another 20 days. So, but realistically speaking, the painting is usually done in like 3 days at the most, depending on how much detail there is, or within a day even. So yeah. Speed is also really important because like sometimes they just figure things out last minute and the executive like the meeting with the stakeholders or the executives are next week or like in a few days. Then you need to like figure things out really quickly, so you do that. So speed is really important. You don't have all the time in the world. How do you balance your own ideas and the direction you receive? Your ideas, that's why I emphasize the importance of detail. I think it's really important to remember that creative directors are so occupied with the concept and the idea in general that they don't have time to look through all the details unless it's really important. So you interject with little minor things that matter, or like you don't necessarily create your own backstory. Never have, but I do consider in mind that things are going to be there because of this, etc., etc. So the direction I receive is usually just a sentence, especially in Universal. It's just like, oh, create this concept art for Back to the Future. It's going to involve the street from Hill Valley and it's going to take place here. Good luck. And you just start everything from there. I did create all the graphics that probably inform the final graphics. So depending on how lenient they are, you might get to do a whole lot. You don't get to do that at WTI because it's a lot more rigid in terms of like there's so many people. And I'm guessing it's probably similar for Universal Creative as well. I work with Hollywood, not like creative. Like I haven't still worked with Orlando, although I have been in talks with them. Something always happens at the end. So we haven't been able to work out stuff with them yet. But yeah, direction you receive is very limited, and then the ideas you have can be as detailed as you want, but usually the general concept is given to you.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Who else has a question? Anybody?
We might have some high school students on. Like, what advice do you give for people young, like not into college yet? Like, what did you do when you were that age? Were you just drawing, painting all the time, or learning, or what?
So I learned painting in 2017, which was like my junior year of college. So you can start as late as you want, really. I don't think it truly matters as long as they like you. Not to say that I'm that good, but I do think it is really important to remain flexible. And I do think it's also really important to have a different perspective. So sometimes, if you do end up in a major that's not teen entertainment, that's totally okay. You can recalibrate because sometimes they appreciate the other perspective. So make sure to just also be mindful of what teen entertainment does, but also be mindful of whatever the hell that whatever the hell that your field that is to do. Disney actually prefers the live entertainment side in particular prefers theater backgrounds because they are obviously involved with shows like parades, and that's more so like putting on like a performance rather than like being interactive. So it really depends. Um, I think there was a time that they preferred the entertainment design students more. Now I don't know what the trend is. So yeah, if you don't end up in the major that you want, that's totally okay. You can always come back to it. But painting, if you are starting now, that's great. You're light years ahead of me. That's great.
Awesome. Anybody else have any questions?
Some in the chat there.
No, I thought we got all those. Okay.
I think we got to it.
Yeah. Try to make sure we've got all those.
That last one, how do you balance between ideas and direction?
Oh, I did talk about that.
Yeah, we
So
talked about
it was
that.
a very convoluted way of answering it, but
All right. If nobody else has any questions, we want to be very cognizant of Clara's time. Any last questions whatsoever? Well, we've got her attention. Speak now.
I have one but I'll let if any students have anything.
I think it's up to you, Josh.
All right. So I'm looking at your 1001 nights on your portfolio,
mhm.
and I see you have like the texture maps there that were applied. I'm just curious, did you use a 3D tool in this process? Like, I'm just kind of curious the overall like steps that kind of how you.
Oh, yes, because the reason that it wasn't on the presentation was because I didn't lose it. I am still sad when I think about it. When I was working at WDI under Kim, my computer got completely done for it. So I lost my Maya files, I lost everything.
Mm,
So I don't have screenshots for it, but I used Maya for that. So textures were baked. I baked textures into it and painted everything over it. But sometimes that was when I did my painting in 2 days, and there were little tweaks that went from there because Kim wanted to see it immediately. And I was like, oh no, my computer is dead and I need to go to the Apple store, and it never got resuscitated. So I just started from scratch. So yeah.
how detailed were your models? I mean, were they just kind of primitives and you apply all that texture to it?
No, they were just primitives and textures, small textures go in there, but I usually paint everything over it because this the model was for a Maya class. It was slightly more detailed, but I usually opt to paint in all the details, and I usually opt to paint over everything.
Love it.
It doesn't slow down my process. So yeah.
Thank you.
And this is just a reminder, everybody, to save, 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 and back up often.
Yes, please do. And it's nice to have another computer.
Don't learn the hard way like Clara just did. Okay. Thank you very much. You have been tremendously helpful, and we really appreciate your time. I guess that's it. We'll just say thank you for joining us, and we'll see you around.
Yeah, if I get to see you, then great. If not, I'm open to questions because sometimes I know it's really difficult to ask questions on the spot. So yeah, anyway,
Awesome.
bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.